What were the dumbest lies you believed when you were a kid? When I was a child, I got upset after a button came off of my shirt. My mother told me not to worry and that if I placed the button under a rock in the yard, the button fairy would replace it with a quarter. I believed it, and to my mother's dismay, she discovered I had pulled the buttons off of every shirt in my closet. To this day, 40 years later, shirt buttons can still be found under random rocks in my parents' backyard. What happened when you learned about the tooth fairy? Not OP, but my mom came into the room in black pants, black jacket, and a black hat. She came over to my bed before I was actually asleep and lifted my head up to put the dollar under. I didn't recognize her, so I thought I was going to get my throat slit or something if the person realized I was awake. I was 7 years old. One of my teachers wanted us to write a letter to a family member or friend or someone. I wrote the letter, got the envelope, got the stamp. My mom had worked at the country jail at the time and she suggested I write one of the inmates who never got mail. So I did. I wrote something along the lines of, "I'm sorry you're arrested, but I hope you get out." I even signed it with my 7-year-old signature. While I was writing the letter my mom had left to get to the store, I asked my older brother what our address was, because I needed to put a return address. He said, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. 20500. For those that don't know, that's the address to the White House. I wrote it on the letter and put it with the mail my mom was sending out. Mind you, I grew up in Michigan and never left the state, but I wasn't smart. Years later, I went to pick my mom up from work and one of the COs called me Mr. President and I asked why he said that. He mentioned me the letter I wrote years prior and how it was a joke in the jail anytime my mom mentioned me. This is one of the funniest stories I've ever read in my life. I'm just imagining some random inmate opening a letter in Shake's 7-year-old kid writing, "I'm sorry you're arrested, but I hope you get out." He looks at the envelope and it's from the White House. He spends several days wondering who the hell wrote that. You made me cry with laughter. When my sister and I were kids, our mom lied and told us that she was a Grammy-nominated and winning singer. She said that all of the trophies were in our attic, knowing that neither of us would ever go in and check for them. My sister and I bragged to all of our friends about it for years, only to discover that our mom isn't a very good singer at all. We've held this lie over her head for nearly 20 years now, so this past Christmas, we gifted her with a fake Grammy that has her name engraved and her favorite music category citing her as the winner of it. She laughed until she cried. My parents convinced us that the person knocking on our door on weekend nights when we were asleep was our Uncle Shiloh stopping to say hello. We don't have an Uncle Shiloh. It was the pizza guy. Uncle Caesar, Uncle John, and Uncle Murphy. My older brother pranked me once. I had watched a kids' TV show, I think it was The Electric Company, that featured a guest star who was a tap dancer. My brother convinced me that tap dancers made their tapping sounds not with their feet, but with their mouths. I spent the next several weeks trying to tap dance with my mouth noises before my mom made me quit. I'm surprised she lasted that long, to be honest. My 5-year-old son is currently on a death metal voice kick. While I generally like metal, and it's kind of adorable, I'm going to get sick of him screaming at the top of his lungs really quick. You can only be yelled at, "Cherries and milk please," so many times. That guacamole was ground up guacamoles. Dads are great, lol. Customers will ask me what the difference is between pork sausage and Italian sausage. I tell them one is made with pork and the other with Italians. I said this to one customer and his kid went wide-eyed with horror. It was hilarious. Wait till you tell them where baby oil comes from. I mean, olive oil comes from olives. Fish oil comes from fish. Dude, don't lie to people like that. Trust me, grinding up babies does not make baby oil. Plus now I'm banned from the local daycare. Good lord, you ground them up? You have to press them. That the hazard button in a car would blow the car up. Holy shit, I'm not the only one. It's such a scary symbol for a kid. Only to find out it just makes the lights blink, lol. My mom told me this, so I just pressed the button to spite her. I'm sorry, honey, you need to do homework tonight instead of going to Joey's sleepover. Oh yeah! Blows up car. Car doesn't blow up. Parent who told the lie in the first place takes note. Little Timmy will murder you for the slightest of inconveniences, even at the cost of his own life. Interesting. Walt Disney invented color. Watching a black and white show, I thought everyone from the 50s and lower had lived in black and white. I asked my father, who invented color? Dad looked at me dead serious and said Walt Disney. I believed it far too long. I used to work as a reenact or at an 1800s village museum. I would go greet the kids at the school bus in my full outfit and give them some context, including holding up black and white photos of the times, before we went into the buildings. One time in a particularly young group, a little girl raised her hand and asked,
"When we go inside, will it be in color or is it still black and white in there?"
I loved this little insight into how a child's mind works. My time to shine. When I was a little kid, I went with my mom to take my dog to the vet for a checkup. I asked her if my dog's doctor would be a dog, lol. No, that only happens when you go to dog tour. That our entire house was covered by cork-sized security cameras and that my parents could see my every move. My kid has convinced herself of the same thing and always randomly asks, "What am I doing right now?" from across the house. My mom convinced us she had eyes in the back of her head. She could tell us what we were doing in the living room while working in the kitchen facing away from us. We'd test it even further by doing the "How many fingers am I holding up?" test, and she'd get it right every time. So all little kid evidence concluded that mom did in fact have eyes in the back of her head. It wasn't until I was much older that I randomly noticed the crystal clear reflection in the kitchen window my mom could always see. My father was a fish taxidermist and had a bunch of glass eyed for them. He told us he had eyes in the back of his head and lifted his hair to show us. Also, I ate a dog biscuit one time, one of those that humans can eat too, and he drew a red dot right on my tailbone when I was sleeping and told me I was going to turn into a dog. Traumatized me for 8 years. One time I was at my dad's, parents separated, and him and a friend were hanging outside sipping beers and smoking cigarettes while I was decapitating dandelions with my sweet-ass plastic ninja sword. My dad never let me have soda when I was a kid. His friend left and my dad went inside to do dishes. I saw a 7-Up can on the deck table and sprinted towards and took a huge swig. Turns out they had been asking and putting their cig butts in there. I run inside and throw up, and my dad goes, "What happened?" I lied and said nothing, but he figured it out. So, he told me all the soda he buys tastes like that, even if they are unopened. I believed him for a few years till I was like 9. I could not understand how all the death scenes in war movies seemed so realistic. So, I asked one of my older brother how they did it. He proceeded to tell me that they empty out state prisons in the area the movie is being made, dress them up, and give them guns, and tell them that if they survive the filming, then they get to leave jail after. I was told that at around 7 and I believed it till I was around 10. LOL, when I asked, my dad just told me that they were paid. He meant that they were just actors and it wasn't real. My 4-year-old self just thought that they were stupid, since no one would have to pay them once they were dead anyway. ATM gives free money. I wanted to get a credit card so I didn't have to pay for things. Some people do use them like that. You can't leave the house after dark because the chupacabra outside will eat you. Well, my grandpa and I went to Forest when I was around 12 years old, and one of my cousins came with us too. He was 16 that time and told me that a creature lives in the woods, which has male and female genital organs. When it is nighttime, it gets out and fucks whatever living thing he grabs. Of course I didn't believe my cousin, I am not that dumb, but when my grandpa seconds him, I cried like a little baby to go home. R.I.P. Grandpa, you crazy old fuck. Plot twist! The grandpa was the creature. Thank you very much for watching. In the comments below the video, write what were the dumbest lies you believed when you were a kid. Also, don't forget to like and share this video with your friends. See you later.